Yo, what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages? It's your hostess with the mostest. It's PKR, Pastor Keenan Riley, talking on a jacked up mic right now, sounding like I am echoing all over this room. I don't know who the sound guy is, but let's fire him.
He probably doesn't get paid enough.
Oh, well, I'm going to tell you right now, if we fire the sound guy, we're firing the podcast completely and shutting it down because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's one of those you need me type situations here.
I was going to say I'm not technologically advanced
Job
at
security.
all. Yeah, so I'm not really for sure what's going on. I don't know if I feel maybe turn up my headphones now. Try that out.
I mean,
just
your
a
headphones
second.
are like maxed out right
Man, well, maybe I'm just losing my hearing.
now. I mean,
Lord,
you're 40.
Lord
Yeah.
Jesus, sweet little baby Jesus, help me out. Right now it's not good. So if you hear the female voice in the background, we have a paid actor on today.
Paid actor. Don't say that. She's not paid either.
So joining us today is Alexa Jenkins. Alexa, talk to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started today. Nothing's gonna. Yeah, absolutely. I need a bio. Okay, that's like one of those things that you put in the section. Let me see if I can relate to the younger generation. That's like the section in your TikTok or in your X account. That's where you're like people put like 4 words these days.
Do people even use
And links,
X
but we don't talk about
anymore?
that.
Oh, that's sneaky links. We don't talk about those.
They're in the bio.
It's true.
They're in
This
there.
is true.
Okay.
So before you get started, back in the day, in my generation,
Lord.
in my generation, we would use the bio section and type out like 2 paragraphs.
Right.
And like usually one paragraph was a song of some sort, and
Never made it as a wife.
yeah, or some kind of cheesy song. But yeah, like the new generation type stuff, y'all do like 4 words,
Yeah.
and then y'all are done.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's like a mystery. I don't know if y'all just lazy or what the deal is, but like
It's
I
their
need.
Enneagram type.
Yeah.
We put
Or
emojis.
personality
like,
type.
Yeah. You put emojis and stuff. Like
Yeah.
I don't even get it.
Like,
Yeah.
just guess.
Yeah, I don't even get it. So, anyways, for the old folks that listen to this, and yeah, would you please tell us about yourself in more than 4 words, but less than a paragraph, about who you are, what you do, where you're from, who your parents are, maybe your social security number, and if you have a bank account.
Okay. Well, I'm 17. I'm a junior in high school, and I go to church here with my family.
Mhm.
We started going here because my sister and
Who doesn't come here anymore?
oh,
My sister.
No, I'm just playing. She still does
She
come
does
here.
come here.
I would just like to see her a lot more often than what she does come here. You know what I'm saying? So both of them. You know what I mean? Both of them. I love
Andrea
them both.
listens. She watches like from home. a
Oh,
lot.
okay. I got you.
Yeah.
Shout out Andrea. Shout
Yeah.
out Ben.
We became a bigger part. I do a lot in the church. I used to do a lot of the kids' classes.
Whoa, let's slow down.
Whoa.
Whoa. You say a lot.
A lot.
You
for
say a
a
lot.
teenager.
Okay, all right.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I
I
used
like
to
that.
do a lot of the kids' classes. Now I run the camera. So if you see the camera shaking in the lives, it's probably me.
Or she's watching her.
Are you
phone.
the one that, like, made me look like-
Whoa. Call me out, why don't you?
I feel like you're the one that made me like add like 10 pounds on. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
I
Alright,
think
not
that's
purposely.
Cam's fault. Like,
Yeah.
That's Cam's
his
fault.
editing of the
Probably.
camera, yeah.
You're probably right. Probably
He's
right.
the reason it's yellow.
The lighting's always off. That's not me.
Yeah.
I
You
didn't
got
do
you got
that.
jaundice, Keenan.
Get it checked out.
You look so yellow
Yeah.
on camera. So,
Lord.
but yeah, you do. All right. So give you a little bit of credit.
Yeah.
You do a lot.
I do a lot with the kids.
You do a lot with the kids. You run
Yeah.
the camera, and
Mhm.
you approached Nick not too long ago and said, "I want to be on the podcast."
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but so you're here.
I'm here.
You're a part of it, and so we were asking a little bit of questions before we jumped on, and I was like, "Alexa, what do you want to talk about?" And she's like, "I don't know. I ain't got a clue.
No.
And I'm like, "Do you know what we do? Do you know what we do on here?" And she said that she listens to episodes,
Yeah.
kinda,
Oh, no.
some episodes here and there.
Mhm.
And so, but she didn't want to talk about old people stuff. Now, old people stuff is literally like
I
what?
wanted to put a younger person's perspective.
All right. Well,
I'm
what?
27.
I'm 40.
Lord.
Yeah. So, what is one person or one perspective of a young person that you want to talk about, that you want to bring attention to in this moment in time? It's your time to shine. Give us one thing that we can talk about in this moment that might make a difference if a young person hears this today?
That was such a crazy question to
That's-
ask, just out of the blue.
That's not a crazy question. That's called direction.
That's such a
called
difficult question.
That would
Like,
actually be objective in court. It'd be like objection leading the witness. You know,
Yeah.
I
I
did watch
think-
Suits.
Hey, you did. Yeah, he's wearing one too.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I think that
What do young people struggle with? What's one thing that you want to shed light on? Body image, bullying. You said yeah to the first
Yeah.
thing I said.
yeah.
All right.
Drug
So,
use. I know we were talking about that.
Drug
drug
use?
use.
Yeah, we were
drug
talking
use
about that a
is
lot.
Such a crazy thing. Like as a high schooler, that's a daily issue. That's a daily struggle. Like
Why-
that's a big thing.
Why do you think people are turning to drugs? Why do you think young people are turning to drugs?
I think that they don't know any other options, and it's available, and it gives immediate help.
Yeah, Nick, what is the available options then besides drugs?
I work for the commitment house, and
Yeah.
but we don't help with kids. Though.
That's such a good plug,
I know,
by
it
the
really
way.
is.
Yeah.
It is. Just plug it right in there. But yeah, we don't work with kids is the only bad thing about that. But hey, if you're 18, and you are, anyway. But yeah, I mean, it is something that we've seen. There was a couple of drug related deaths in the teenage community. Here recently in our area. Kids. I think he was an athlete.
It was a really bad situation, and
Yeah,
I knew him.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah.
I know, because we've talked about it on this podcast, I think before, but it was pretty crazy. Because there was a kid, and there's several. I mean, it's not just one.
There was two.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's two.
Yeah.
And they got one of them. Did both of them die? Okay. Yeah. Both of them died from drug related use. What are you?
I feel like this is it's like Nick says it was, probably it's like one or probably several. Alexa's like, yes, two.
Yeah,
I'm like,
well,
what?
I mean, there's obviously
And then
there's
Nick's
more
like,
kids
did they
taking
die?
drugs.
I'm like, what is happening right now? like, are we just gathering
Yeah, we're
information
gathering
as we
information.
go? Okay.
Breaking
All right.
news.
It
We're
was
getting this on the spot. The teleprompter is up there in front of us.
Please proceed.
But no, it is become a problem. I know Alexa and I were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, and it is definitely a problem. It is interesting to kind of see, I guess what we would say, boots on the ground. Somebody down there in the trenches with all these students doing these things. And I guess like I said, I don't like if I'm sitting there thinking about a question with these kids that are dealing. I know Alexa said they're trying to find kind of like a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Is kind of what I gather. A lot of these kids. I mean, it's not just kids.
In
it's
the
a lot
school
of adults.
system? In the school system, they're trying to find it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say even school system. It's not because what I really like, I guess, about Alexa. She's what I call a mental health advocate. She went on the suicide awareness walk with us. She's done a lot of that kind of stuff, and I know she helps out a lot of her friends with a lot of those types of issues and things like that. So really, I guess I know this is going to be a loaded question for you too. Well, what is the current mental state of the kids that you work that are surrounding you in your school?
Whack. I can tell you
Whack.
that.
Yeah,
Whack.
nobody is doing good at this time. Like no one knows what to do. No one really knows how to feel.
But
I
why
think
is that?
COVID,
Yeah, why is
It was
that?
a lot of COVID. COVID messed everybody up. It ruined all of our schedules and our
So you're
learning
you're
time.
saying people are still trying to recover from 4 years ago, 5 years
Yes.
ago now. At
Yes,
this
they
point.
are.
Okay.
And they didn't learn what they were supposed to learn when they were supposed to learn it.
Yeah.
That messed people up really
Yeah,
bad.
that's big.
The isolation really separated us, and people led to doing drug use instead of like getting help and figuring things out.
See, like that's the crazy part because like people were telling you, hey, look, like isolation, stay in, stay away from everybody, don't get around people. People are dying, blah blah blah. And it's like now that you see the long-term effects of isolation, and then you're seeing that like people developed habits, people, like you said, there's kids that are behind in grades now.
Yes.
There's a lot that's going on, and so even to spin it with kids, but not only kids, but just spiritually even about how isolation and about how like being off like that lone wolf mentality that we talk about sometimes. About like how dangerous it is to try to navigate life or try to navigate a situation on your own. It's so dangerous because you turn inward, you don't know how to deal with it, you don't know how to filter it, and then before you know it, like you are trying to reach out to drugs, to alcohol, to these things to suppress feelings or to kind of deal with your emotions and stuff. And I guess like I guess because maybe I don't have kids that age yet. My kids are 13 and 10. I guess maybe I'm so disconnected from that, from that mentality and from that kind of avenue of life, and that it's like I didn't know that it was such a big issue, as what it is.
Yeah, it's a big issue. People are doing things that they shouldn't be doing because they don't really have the education to know better.
Yeah. So are we talking like hard drugs? Or are we talking like some fentanyl and like things like that? Or are we talking like marijuana? Or are we talking pills? Or are we
We're talking everything.
Full spectrum.
Like I'm saying, everybody is doing everything. You can't turn a corner in a hallway without seeing someone doing some sort of drug.
So it's that bad?
It is that bad.
Wow.
Administration at Central Hardin High School, you need to get y'all crap together.
Shout
They're
out,
trying.
man.
There's not a lot they can do.
Well, here's the crazy part about that. I feel like that if you notice it, if you see it, and if you're a part of it, then like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we need to bring attention to that, because I mean, here we are. I feel like, Nick, that we do this a lot, that like it's not important until it happens to us. And so, like, we can talk about addiction, and and Alexa can talk about it and things like that. But and it seems like people don't get all up in an uproar until it affects them in some shape, form, or fashion. And so, what do we have to do mentality-wise to change that?
Yeah, guys, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm asking you, bro. No, I'm asking you first, and then she can chime in.
It's hard because I think I'll say this. I had a conversation with somebody the other day about the drug, because I've worked in mental health and things like that in Hardin County, which is a county here locally in Kentucky. It's a pretty big county. It's definitely a growing county. It's where Alexa goes to school, and where I work, and all that kind of stuff.
And we don't have a Canes, by the way.
We don't have a Canes yet. Raising Canes, if you're listening, we want one, please.
Right.
Alexa approves. So
even though she's got a Lee's cup on the table right now.
Traitor.
Yeah.
Turn that Lee's cup into a Raising Cane's cup. Give us a Raising Cane's in the area, and we'll never go to Lee's.
Yeah, again. Never again.
But ultimately, that's what I have noticed, what I have seen growing up in this area, going to school around this area, working in this area, is that a lot of people don't realize how big of a problem that it is. It's not. I oftentimes think that it's kind of like brushed aside. It's not talked about. We don't want to talk about it. There's that negative stigma to it. We don't want to admit that our citizens, our schoolmates, classmates are having these types of problems. It opens up the door, because it's kind of like, okay, who's responsible? We're responsible. We're not doing enough to help it, or to stop it, or to talk about it. Because I said it wasn't. I didn't realize how big of a problem it was in our area, and I'm talking. Drug use, I'm talking sexual violence, I'm talking homelessness, I'm talking all these types of things, that don't get the attention that it deserves, for whatever reason that you want to throw out there. But I didn't know it was a problem until I started working in those places. Where I started working at a rape crisis center, I started working in substance abuse treatment facilities, I started working in adult and child crisis units, where I start working in schools, and I see these things as a much bigger problem than they actually are. We send our I know Keenan, his kids go to private school, my kids kid goes public school. I've taught in public school, Alexa goes public school. The public school system is easy. I think it's convenient for a lot of people, but you get this wide range of people from different backgrounds, different races, different religions, different socioeconomic statuses, different backgrounds, upbringings, all those sorts of things. And it really becomes this ultimate mixing pot of the people in our area. You have kids in there who have experienced either sexual abuse themselves, or they've seen physical abuse in their parents, or their parents use, or they're coming from single parent households in low income areas. All these types of different things that these kids are coming, they're all mixing and meshing together. And when you have this uniting force of COVID, for example, this thing that everybody kind of has this ultimate trauma bonding with, they all experienced it, they all went through it together, they all start to share coping mechanisms. And so you have people from well-off, affluent families who are doing things that, typically we only saw in lower income neighborhoods. And so you see all these things kind of happen and mesh and mix and all these sorts of different things, and it becomes a much bigger problem than I think most administrations agree with. Would you agree that that's kind of what you see?
Yeah, I agree. That's what I see, yeah.
And so, I think it's definitely something that has become a much bigger problem, and it's it is ultimately, I'm thankful for, people like kids like Alexa. We have a couple other youth that are great about it as well, kind of being a light in that darkness. Because ultimately I think, we can, because I've worked in drug education, I've worked in, different education sectors that go into schools and they try to teach kids coping mechanisms and healthy habits and, all these sorts of different things, teach people the dangers of drugs. But, having an adult come into a classroom and in a sense talk down to you. I always try to relate to the students, but you have an adult come into a classroom and tell you, what they know about a topic. What is it, from your perspective, Alexa? What is it that would really, what would help these kids? What would help them get that information, hold on to that information? Is there a different tactic, a different method that you think would work better, or what?
I think a lot of like when adults, like you were saying, like when adults come into the room and tell you something, you are you're not going to listen. You're not going to hear them because you think that they're just telling you something because they're an adult and they think they know best. I think
we do.
I think it works better if you have the kids do their own research and maybe do like presentations of their own like research to like show what they know.
So
yeah, go ahead.
What? But just to play devil's advocate, like, could that not be a little bit dangerous in a way too? Because, like, information wise, you could be led down a path that is not true. It could be disinformation or misinformation or whatever they call it these days. To a point of where it's like, oh, well, maybe I can do this drug because it's not nearly as whatever the case may be. Like, it doesn't have maybe the effects, or it doesn't, like, I know people that do like medical marijuana and things like that. And to each his own, do what you want to do type situation. But, I can see somebody, like, if somebody wants to do drugs, you're going to do what you're going to do. We had this conversation anyways, like last week. But if somebody wants to do, let's just say, marijuana, to me, studying information and going down a rabbit hole on your own and going, oh, well, like, yeah, this marijuana may be bad, but I found medicinal marijuana, and it could be good. And so,
your algorithm will feed you all
kinds of different things. And we've seen how that works. We've seen how technology works in that regard. So, like, do you think maybe too that it could be kind of like dangerous if kids are just kind of left out there in their own accord to kind of just figure out their own information?
I think kids are already in a dangerous situation and are already doing that. They don't know anything. So by doing the research and telling each other, then they're getting more information out because no one knows anything.
Well, then help me then, because help the hip old dad.
Hip old dad.
The hip old dad. Help the Danny Tanners of the world. You probably don't even know who Danny Tanner is, do you?
Danny Tanner
okay.
Bob Saget.
All right. Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, for real. So help the Danny Tanners of the world then. Like, what can adults do as far as being supportive or trying to build that bridge to youth, to kids, or whoever, to kind of influence, talk, maybe gain some trust, and then feed information in?
You need to make yourself a safe space for your kids to talk about their mental health.
Okay, so not just like always coming at you and like just you're always in trouble and always getting fussed at and yelled at, but like more of a conversation type area.
Yes, you need to make sure that there's an open space where they can talk to you about how they feel, and they don't feel like they're going to get judged or yelled at for feeling that way.
Did they teach you that, Nick? Like, did they teach you? Yeah. Like, you care to comment on that? Like, I know you've had some, like I know you said you've worked at like substance abuse and, things like that. Like, do they teach you that area of like how to be a safe space and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's, in a sense, it's hard to teach that, because you have some people who are going to be naturally more, this is my way or the highway. I want, you got to be strong. You can't be weak.
I think I was going to say, I think it's hard to listen to a story without judgment sometimes. Mm-hmm. Now I'm not saying that, that you should or you shouldn't or whatever. None of us are perfect. So, like, if you start telling a story about how whatever your story is, I think it's only human nature for us to just go down that road of looking and going, yeah, but if you wouldn't have been here, if you wouldn't have said this, or if you wouldn't have done this, then, you wouldn't have had that problem. So, it's kind of like tough for us to reel back those emotions and those judgment calls and be like, all right, got to stay centered. I got to listen. I can't form an opinion. I just got to be open.
Yeah, I think sometimes we try to fix every problem rather than listen to every problem.
Of course.
I think there was an episode of Parks and Recreation with Rob Lowe's character, and
I've never seen. I've never seen
it
that.
either.
But so
Andy Griffith show, you said?
No,
Andy
not
Griffith?
Andy Griffith. No, Parks and Recreation. That is literally came out after The Office.
I was just trying to show my age.
Your
man.
age, I know, but you watch The Office is what I'm saying. But
like
basically Rob Lowe's character, and then the girl, I can't remember her actor's name, but her name was Ann Perkins in the show. She was pregnant, and he was somebody who was super energetic, super hyper, and all this sort of thing. Always wanted to fix things, always wanted to be positive and uplifting, and she would always complain about her pregnancy symptoms, and he would always try to fix the problem. And ultimately, they had to tell his character, that hey, instead of trying to fix every problem, just look at her and say, that sucks. I think ultimately, we sometimes, our kids bring us problems, and we think, hey, we need to fix this. We need to fix this problem. My kid's upset. My kid's experiencing this. I need to fix it. There has to be an answer. What's the answer? I got to find that answer. I got to help them. I got to make sure that they don't feel that way anymore. And instead of trying to shut that portion off in your brain and just listen to what your kid is trying to say. Listen to the fact that they're hurting, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're fearful, they don't like the way they look, they don't like the way people talk about them. They, all these sorts of different things. Just being able to let someone vent, let someone cry out, pour out their heart, instead of just trying to fix it. Be that shoulder to cry on, and be that open space.
Don't you feel like though that is a different style of parenting than what? I mean, I don't know what kind of parenting you had. Obviously horrible since you turned out the way you are.
Obviously,
but think about I think about growing up let me predate myself here, in the late '80s and early '90s, and the style of parenting back then is completely different from what you guys are talking about today, and what you're talking about in this moment. Like where you're talking about now, a more acceptable, inclusive. Let's listen. Let's not judge. Like I'm here to help. I'm here to kind of. Back in the day, back in the the '80s and '90s, it was like, first off, let me beat you to within an inch of your life, and then after that, you will not do it again, because by brute force, the pain that you've experienced, so don't do it again. Not saying that that's the right way, not saying that that's the wrong way. But it's like I can see both ways. I can see, I felt like I turned out to be a pretty decent human being for the most part. But I can also remember that whenever I did fail as a kid or fall short, then I was scared to tell my parents. I was scared because I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get my hind end beat, But at the same point in time, I think about how that fear made me almost stop and think about, before I done something, man, I'm gonna get my hind end beat off for that. You know what I'm saying? I felt like it worked both ways. I felt like I would be kind of sneaky and kind of in the shadows about some stuff. But then I also like the big stuff, where I was like, man, no, I'm gonna get my head knocked off for that one. Probably shouldn't do that, So I feel like it worked both ways. But if you talk to people, if you talk to my parents today, and they're in their 70s now, but if you talk to my parents about that type of parenting, they'd look at you like, yeah, I didn't raise kids like that, So what do you think the transition is? What do you think what do you think was the snap of the fingers in society, where it's like, hey, let's go from this hard nosed kind of pressing, don't screw up or you get the belt mentality, to hey, come to me. I'm a safe space. Let me love on you. I'll listen to anything you got to say. I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to try to help you. What do you think flipped in society, or what do you think, happened to make it a cultural norm now to where we kind of parent different?
Therapy.
Okay.
I think, you always go to, your therapist and be like, why am I this way? Well, because of your mother. Because of your father, because, and I think there's been an awakening of sense to mental health, a little bit better understanding of it as time has gone. Of course, science has expanded, our understanding of the mind has changed. We now know that, the mind reacts differently. A traumatic or a traumatized brain, is going to react differently. It's going to be different. I was just having that conversation with my brother not too long ago about some people, hey, you have, somebody with a traumatized brain, they're going to respond and react differently to something seemingly normal to us
Mhm.
because they're hypersensitive, they're hypervigilant. A normal little small bang on a door, is maybe a little bit of a start to us, but they'll jump out of their seat. It's like
Mhm.
their brain is wired differently. The beatings, the yelling, all these sorts of things, they build pathways into the brain that kind of lead to the thought of I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I need somebody, I need something else. It's the brain is formed by our experiences. I think there is a nature part to it. We're born a certain way, and our thoughts are brain wired a certain way, but the experiences that we go through, we're morphed and formed based on what we've gone through, what we've experienced, both physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever you want to say.
Mhm.
I think there's also been, we talked when I was in college, we talked about like policing, for example. Back when you were saying like 80s, 90s, something like that, there was
He
this,
likes
back
to,
in the day.
he likes to throw his education around
I
on
do
me,
throw it around a little bit.
because like I got through high school,
Yeah.
and
And
a
you
little
quit
bit of
college.
and a little bit of college,
Quit
college.
Anyway, the prison system, for example, or the law enforcement, there was a what was called like a retaliation type model where basically, we would punish the person for what they did.
Mhm.
They did something wrong, we would punish them the harshest punishment possible to keep them from doing what they did again. And then we saw this shift, closer into the 2000s, 90s, things like that, where there was like we wanted to rehabilitate people more than actually retaliate. So we wanted to work on helping the person become a better, more useful member of society.
So you're telling me that with the rehabilitation process in prisons today, that it has helped people versus hurt the system?
I mean, it's up to the prison. I mean, I don't think you can blanket statement and say like, hey, this has helped. Like, because I mean, there are some prisons that are going to be ran, like we're going to give you strictest, depends on the judge, depends on the prison, depends on the county, depends on all that stuff.
Did you know that repeat or that no, I'm sorry, that first time offenders have a 45% chance of going back to jail the second time?
Mhm. And then I think that's why there was a shift in momentum as far as like what we're doing obviously isn't working. We need to
Yeah.
find a way to rehabilitate these people into society in a way that they don't reoffend, because one of the biggest problems was they had problems going into prison, they had problems in prison, and then they left prison with the same problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to go back to what they're used to, back to what they're comfortable. We talk about that on this podcast all the time. That's what people are.
In case you don't listen, Alexa.
Yeah, in case you don't listen, people suck. But
Love them anyways.
Love them anyway. There you go. She got it.
She did. Yeah.
That's all she needs to know. But I think we saw that, and so we've made a shift, and I think that is kind of what we're seeing in society today. Is that we've seen that these parents beating fear into the children has not really done all that good that we thought it did. But we've learned that we still have kids that are dealing with anxiety, dealing with and I think ultimately what we've learned is that society is so much different today than what it was. We've talked about this a little bit on the podcast before, but and Alexa can kind of attest to this. But kids these days have access to so much more bad, negative, no good
Yeah.
stuff than even I did growing up, or especially than you did growing up back in the old days.
There's so much on social
Back
media.
before cell phones.
Back before cell phones, right? I mean, there's a guy that I listen to. His name's John A. Cuff. I've talked about him before, but on his podcast, he said, he's like, I feel bad for the kids of this generation. Like he writes books with his teenage daughters, how to help kids and things like that. And he's like, I feel bad for teenagers today because he's like, when I was a kid, I didn't have porn in my pocket. Like I didn't have these things that I just had easy available access to. Like Alexa is saying, I mean, there's drugs everywhere in that school. I mean, like they're everywhere. If you want it, you can get it.
Mm-hmm.
You have easy 100% access to it. And I think we've seen that this society has shifted so negatively for Alexa's age, younger than that. I mean, I remember when I worked at Silverleaf, we had 4th and 5th graders sexting one another. I mean, like there was things. It's crazy the
Am
things.
I that old?
Yeah, you are that old.
Yeah, you're
you are that old. You may not think you are with your holy jeans.
I just think I don't wear those anymore.
Yeah, sometimes.
I know. I guess I just think it's wild, man. That kids are being exposed younger and younger and younger these days to things like that. Like
you could even see it in like my grade. Like when I was in 8th grade, the things that the people in my class were doing were nothing like the kids that like the 7th graders that became 8th graders. The stuff that they were doing.
Yeah,
it's a crazy shift. Like between my grade and the grade below me, you could see like how much more they were affected than even my grade was.
Right.
They were
Expand on that.
exposed to so much more.
Like examples.
Like
This
in
is a safe
eighth grade,
space.
yeah, in eighth grade, nobody in my grade was smoking weed or getting caught doing things.
Mhm.
The next grade, the eighth graders after us, they were getting pregnant and
Yeah.
smoking weed, and there was cops there all the time, like
Yeah.
arresting kids because they were doing drugs.
I think it's crazy because, and I think this is a good teaching point, honestly, like even for myself, because like I feel like that I'm still like, even though I joke about being old, I feel like I'm still kind of connected a little bit, but it still just blows my mind to think about, how far things have progressed since,
Regress.
well, yeah, regress, but I get, yeah, but like in a moment where, if I go back and put myself in a sixth grade, seventh grade position, it's like you're not thinking about smoking a J behind the bleachers, or you're not thinking about passing pills in the bathroom. You're not thinking about, things like that.
Riding your vape.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just it's a completely different day and time that we live in, and it's like it's an exposure thing, and I think honestly we're guilty of this, of like thinking it's not a problem because we're not a part of it. So like, for my kids who are very privileged to go to private school. Now, like that's what you made it sound like,
Oh, you're
anyways. But no, like so, for my kids to kind of be around a setting where it's like that's not doable. Like nothing like that's going on. I hope. I pray.
Yeah.
But
Be surprised.
right? They're doing church labor over there, man. But it's like, so I guess maybe it's because my kids are shielded like I'm shielded. So it's like whenever you come on and you're like, yeah, man, like actually they were shooting up in the bathroom, two eighth graders. I'm like,
crazy things
what?
are happening
I'm
in the
like,
building.
what are we talking about right
Yeah.
now? Like, where are they? I guess maybe the next part I want to ask is where are they getting it from?
Where are they getting it from?
Yeah.
It's their parents, high school parents are
Out
giving
the
it to
dealers,
their
out the dealers. Come on, you know any dealers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Snitch,
witness,
snitch,
witness,
snitch.
yeah, witness
Yeah.
protection.
Yeah.
No,
Witness
one of them
protection.
I can't talk about him because he's involved in that.
In a mess.
Yeah,
in the mess.
he's involved in a big mess.
So you're saying the parents of the high schoolers,
The
is that what you
parents of
said?
the high schoolers are giving it to their kids.
Are giving it to the high
kids are
schoolers.
giving it to other kids, and those kids are selling it to the middle schoolers and the elementary schoolers.
So-
and it's just a pyramid from the adults.
That's the gospel in a nutshell. Pyramids.
That's what I'm saying. Like they
Yeah,
took the pyramid scheme and
Yeah.
now they're making money off the pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Why can't I do this, man?
Yeah,
Like if Jesus doesn't work out, I'm going to drug dealing.
No.
It's on record.
Yeah,
On record right now, right here.
But like so that's, I guess that's crazy to me. It's like that you have parents that don't care,
No.
and they're like, because but here's where I want to go with that mentality of what you were talking about earlier about creating that safe space and things like that. Because I've heard people like, and this was a little bit like edgy whenever I was growing up, teenager wise and stuff like that. But like we knew certain places, certain houses that we could go to where parents didn't care,
Mhm.
and so we would go and like do stuff that we're not supposed to be doing because parents didn't care. And like on that mentality, if you have a parent that looks at their kid and goes, like if you're gonna do drugs, do them at least where I can see you.
Mhm.
If that's the mentality that you have, then it's okay to do them. And if it's okay to do them, then you're going to think it's okay to sell them. And if it's okay to sell them, then like there's no ending point at that point. So like where does it become like a draw, like a line in the sand where it's like, yeah, you want to be that safe space, but you got to be a safe space in a reasonable way, I feel like.
I think there's a difference between caring and not caring. Like there's like a safe space
This
where
is
they
true.
care about you, and there's like an unsafe space where they do not care what you do.
So a safe space of caring would be like yes, you can come to me if you fail, but I don't want you just blatantly outright doing it in front of me and feeling comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think there's it's like you have parents who are just basically like I let me go back to what I was so we have a lot of flawed parents raising
Mhm.
flawed kids is
Yes.
really, I mean, I think what we've
And it's
developed,
everyone.
you know, and it goes back to what we said about that, you know, that abusive model of, I say abusive model of parenting, but you know, that old school model of parenting where it was like, you know,
Now it's our fault.
Right, it is your fault.
Now
you know,
it's our fault.
Exactly. Again,
somehow or another, the guy that's never dealt drugs in his life, it's his fault.
Exactly.
You know, like.
But no, again, I ain't gonna speak, you know, why, what, you know, all those sorts of things. You know, you had back in the, you know, the 60s, you know, you had people just openly, you know, smoking marijuana, doing cocaine, all these sorts of, I mean, like the U.S. government literally gave crack cocaine to Black Americans. Got, you know, like, I mean, it's so many different things that that problems that we created that now we are dealing with, like this war on drugs, you know, that the government has created and has dealt, you know, they started a lot of this problem and have, you know, it's gotten worse and worse, and now, you know, we're mixing drugs with kids who experienced physical abuse growing up or verbal abuse growing up, and it is that we're expecting them to raise good kids.
Well, what do you think about like Narcan being just like what do you want to call it? Accessible? Yeah. What do you think about Narcan being accessible? And it's like, oh, okay, well, I can still do my drugs now because now I can just run over and get this Narcan really quick, or you know that there's at least a safety net there if things do get out of control.
And I think, like, to me, that's kind of like a skewed excuse. Like, like, to me, I'm like, to me, Narcan, like, I think it's sad that we have to make Narcan so readily available. You know, I think it's sad that has to be a thing. Like here in the United States, here at least in Kentucky, you know, like you can get Narcan anywhere. It's in vending machines. It's, you know, at health departments, police stations. You know, you can get it, use it, you know, if necessary. Now, you know, if you are getting this Narcan for the sole purpose of, you know, hey, my buddy's going to shoot up OD and then I'm going to Narcan him and then I'm going to do the same thing, like that's a different problem.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, that's stupid. You know, like I mean that's stupid. Now, like,
but you are going to have some people that say that making it so easily accessible is being more of the problem than the solution.
And those types of people, I think, are stupid.
Yeah, I mean, your idea of Narcan is very different than what Narcan actually is. It's like a temporary solution. You do Narcan and then you call 911 and then they get taken to the hospital and do more to help the OD. It like covers your brain for a little bit. It's not like a permanent solution to overdosing.
Right, like, right. I think the people who have the mentality of Narcan availability is going to lead more people to overdose are the same people who have the mentality of, you know, she got raped because of what she was wearing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like that mentality is just
that's
dumb.
a road.
That's
a road.
It is a road. I mean, like,
that's a road.
You know, I mean, not to dive too deep or head into that one, but like, you know, it's just, you know, I think, you know, there are obviously, you know, as Alexa's presented, as we've talked about, there is obviously a problem with our young people, you know, and we see all the time, you know, the decline of America, the decline of you know, this problem is starting somewhere. And
this is the golden age of America, by the way.
Golden age, is it? You know, it's about to be. We're about to make it great again.
We're like 5-6 days into it.
5-6 days into it. Amen. Gulf America and everything.
Yeah.
But you know, I think, you know, ultimately though, we're, you know, we. Like I'm done.
Politics. You don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We'll stop the old people talk. But I love talking about politics. But you know, because, you know, to me, when we sit there and say that, like, you know, Narcan's just going to make more people use, you know, Narcan, that's such a hateful way to think about things. You know, like, the availability of Narcan is hopefully, you know, I look at it as it is going to potentially save lives.
Yes.
You know, and I think even, you know, as a Christian perspective, you know, all those sorts of things, like, it is a good thing. You know, it's helping people. It's going to save people. And to look at it as anything other than that is kind of unfair. You know, I think it's, you know, you have the wrong mentality, the wrong mindset. Your heart position is not in the right place. You know, your heart position is like, you know, you're mad and you're angry at drug users. That's it. You know, you don't want people to use it. I don't want people to use it, but I want people to have availability of Narcan so that way they can use it to help themselves or help their loved ones. I mean, like, God forbid you're going to use drugs in a house with your kid, but if your kid knows you have Narcan in there and they watch you overdose and they know how to use it, like, they're going to save your life. You know, I mean, that's a horrible, unfortunate situation.
How do they know how to use it?
I mean, hopefully
we're taught it in schools, actually.
So you're taught in school now?
Yeah, they've showed us how to
that's
do it.
That's sad, too.
We have, like,
that's
do,
crazy.
like, gymnasium, like, things.
Yeah, they do overdose simulations. That's what Mackenzie, my wife, she's a Family Resource Youth Service Center coordinator at North Hardin High School. And she is responsible for coordinating trainings like that, and getting them in the school and doing things like that. And I think ultimately kind of going to the point of all of this is what do we do about it? Obviously the Alexa, she's talked about the problem. It's a very apparent problem. It's an obvious problem. And I would argue that this isn't just a Hardin County, Kentucky problem. I would argue that, because we have listeners in Indiana, Oklahoma, New Jersey, India, Australia, all over the place. And now I'm not going to speak on other countries, but I know that this is definitely a problem in America. And so what can we do? How do we talk about this? How do we give education? How do we? And I think Keenan kind of touched on this earlier when asking Alexa, but what, Alexa, would you like to see more of to help combat this problem?
More kids being educated. She already answered that.
Yeah.
More kids
more kids
specifically
being
about what though? Like, because we've talked about, this is what I'm saying, like education's there. You're getting taught how to use Narcan. You have people coming into the schools, they're doing this. What else is there that can be done? Like, what would you as a kid like to see for your fellow classmates?
More enforcement of the law.
More enforcement of the law.
Like
She said that so vaguely. She's like, maybe,
like,
death penalty.
They know who is selling the drugs. They know the kids that are doing the drugs.
Yeah.
But they just don't have enough proof of them doing it.
And we need some narcs in the school. We need to hire some teenagers.
If
body cams.
They know who does it.
If they done a show like on Netflix about that, bro, it would blow up. It'd be number one. I guarantee it.
They'd have to blur all the kids' faces out.
Oh yeah, 1,000%. But yeah, if they did like narcs in high school,
Beyond Scared Straight.
Where
they used to take the kids into the jails.
Yeah, and let them sit for like 30 days, and like they would be like, they'd be all tore all to pieces.
You've never seen that show? There was a show that was like on A&E or something like that, where like they would take these absolutely crazy kids who would always get in trouble, and they would like take them to prison. And like they would treat them like inmates, basically. They let the inmates talk to them, yell at them, cuss at them, threaten them, all these sorts of different things to kind of scare the kids straight, like to get them to walk the narrow line, right? But I think because I know, because I've been in schools, I've taught kids things like this. I was talking to Alexa earlier about a situation with a student at her school that I had a conversation, because she was like, "What's wrong with smoking marijuana? It ain't bad for you." And I said, "But you have no idea what's in that." And I think one of the biggest problems that we've seen here recently is laced drugs. It's not necessarily the drug itself that's as bad as what could possibly be in it. And I always made the joke. I said, you're trusting, Chad out here who failed chemistry, drives a Honda Civic. We're trusting that, marijuana that he sells out the back of his trunk to be okay. To be good.
I feel like that is such an unfair,
it is a horrible stereotype.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Chad.
Stereotype.
Right.
I never knew one Chad who drove a Honda Accord and failed chemistry.
Good for you. I never knew a Chad. That's all.
I grew up with a Chad, but he's doing all right in life.
Good for you, Chad.
He's doing all right in life. But just go ahead.
But I think I told the student, I said, you're trusting this other student of yours. Who obviously, you're putting a lot of trust in a drug dealer. Number one, you're putting a lot of trust in a drug dealer, not to do something or not to have something that could be possibly more dangerous than of. And I was like, there's that kid that died in Hardin County, from that overdose. It was a laced pill. It was a pain pill, pain medication, and it was laced with fentanyl. And fentanyl, of course, if you don't know what that is also a pain medication, but it is a very, very, very strong pain medication. It's like a gram of it can kill a human. It's crazy how easy it is for that to kill somebody and cause an overdose. Now, of course, there are people out there, that use fentanyl to get high because their pain tolerance, their body has developed such a high tolerance that it can handle that without immediately shutting down. And we talked a lot about the gateway drug situation. Somebody tries marijuana or alcohol, and that's not enough for them anymore, so they try for something bigger, something stronger, and you just put yourself at more and more risk, and it's just more of a problem. And it's something that I feel like everyone listening to this, watching this, has been touched by in some way, shape, or form. You can't tell me that you don't have at least one addict or one alcoholic or somebody in your family that's been affected by this in some way, shape, or form. Especially if you go to school, you're Alexa's age, watching this, listening to this, people personally who are doing this, who have this as a problem. And so, I think, we talked a lot. Alexa talked about having that, those hands on the boots on the ground. I think ultimately what we're needing is more kids, like Alexa's age. We have to have people in the schools that these kids can relate to with arm them with knowledge that they can then share directly to some of their classmates. Because I would say, you're going to be more willing to listen and relate to somebody your age, looks like you, talks like you, all that kind of stuff, than you would that adult that comes in the classroom. I think the adult that comes in the classroom is good. It's helpful. It's giving information that's important. But I think arming students at that level, arming students with that education, that knowledge. There's a program that I taught when I worked at the Rape Crisis Center. They still teach it in high school. It's called Green Dot. It's a bystander intervention program that basically says instead of just standing by and letting things happen, you intervene in a couple of different ways that's safe and all that kind of stuff. I think having kids intervene in situations where you see this going on. You're having what's the word? Conferences, not conferences. What's the word? You're going to a gym and somebody talks about something.
No, I don't confrontation.
You're having like assemblies. There we go. You're having assemblies, but they're like student-led assemblies. Where the student is talking about the dangers of this, what they see in the hallways. And because I know kids your age, especially guys your age. I've seen how blatant they are. They think it's funny. They think that drug use is funny. They think lacing something is funny. And that in and of itself is another problem. But the twisted sense of humor. Some of these, some of these kids, that's crazy to me. My wife, they did a presentation not too long ago about suicide, and she's like, you have no idea how many students got up and asked like the stupid, most just offensive questions possible. Mm-hmm. They were asking questions to get a laugh out of everybody. The girl they liked, the guys that they were hanging out with, whatever. But we have kids who, number one, aren't taking this serious. Mm-hmm. I'm sure Alexa can attest to that. There's a lot of kids out there that they're not taking this serious. They think it's a joke. They think it's a problem until, as Keenan said, it happens to someone they know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have that situation like Alexa you were talking about, where a classmate, someone that was beloved by other classmates, somebody that was nice, friendly, all that kind of thing,
had a college lineup.
Yeah, had just signed on with a college to play sports there. Mm-hmm. And then dies like the next day from a fentanyl overdose because of a laced pill. Mm-hmm. Just being as real and open and honest, with fellow classmates, trying to get these kids to take that serious. Now, and on a parental standpoint, I know a lot more parents listen to this than people's Alexa's age, but being that open, safe space that Alexa talked about, to where maybe even starting the conversation a little bit, saying, like, hey, what I saw this happen in the news. Is this something that you guys are dealing with on a regular basis? Mm-hmm. Are you guys, do you see kids using drugs at school? Like, opening that conversation, getting that door open to have those open conversations. And please, for the love of God, not those kids are stupid. Like all these, that's not being that open, safe space that Alexa was talking about. You don't want to attack these kids' fellow classmates or friends or things like that. You want to, offer, is there anything I can do? Are there any resources that I need to get a hold of? You want to make sure that you are being a part of the solution, not adding to the problem. Mm-hmm. And that's difficult. That's a hard line to walk. Go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say, I know that this kind of may be more out of a broad situation than maybe affecting right here at home. But I know we have listeners all over the world. But do you think that maybe if TV shows and things like that, like maybe even started gearing towards situations like that, do you think kids would be more reasonable to listen to something like that versus maybe an adult that's close to them or something like that?
Maybe. There are shows that show drug usage in high school, but they glorify it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Euphoria.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Euphoria glorifies drug usage in high school, and
right,
makes
and underage
way
sex
better.
and everything else.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where again, I think that's where the world has become a lot more accepting of of whatever lifestyle you choose. It doesn't matter. It's it's we're just going to promote you do you, exactly, type situation. I was just saying, I can remember, you remember Family Matters? You know what Family Matters is, the TV show? Steve Urkel?
I've heard of it, but
okay.
Did I do that?
Yeah.
I do know that, but I haven't watched
but I can remember as a kid, because gun violence was a huge issue back in the day. Still is, but it was coming on the scene, I guess. And it was especially still bad, in Chicago, which is kind of like the base of where Family Matters was filmed at. And they had an episode about gun violence in schools. And they had this episode where a kid bought a gun illegally from the back of a trunk because he was having problems with somebody in school and so on and so forth. And the episode basically centered on somebody getting shot at school over a disagreement about like buying shoes or something like that. Like they was trying to bully him and get a pair of shoes off of him, and they shot him. And like I can remember at the end of that episode, like those characters coming out of character and just being real people and just talking about like, hey, if you know anybody that's went through gun violence, dealing with gun violence, and like even as a kid, I can remember that episode. Like it's stuck with me because of, I guess maybe because I was young and impressionable at that time, and like something that I hadn't experienced, and like so I seen it and I was like, oh my gosh, like what happened? So I just didn't know maybe if that was like an area or an avenue even where again we know that not every show is going to be like that, but like maybe we could find like some kind of material or something that is kind of geared more towards that could speak to kids. I think a lot of times if I'm talking to you, you're not going to listen to me because just of how close a proximity I am to you. Not like in the fact of I'm 6 inches away from you, but like that I'm the normal person that you see. So it would be, if I'm sitting here talking to you, you're like, yeah, I hear you all the time, whatever,
Whatever.
exactly. But like if you see this person I mean, Hollywood's got to do a better job. We know it's not going to happen. But I mean, like if you take these people that aren't afraid to step out on the sidelines and say, hey, look, like this is something that could literally kill you. This is something that could rob you of life. This is something like, do you
more
think,
than just a disclaimer before the
right.
episode?
Well,
like,
yeah,
hey, we don't.
But not only that, like we were talking about, like music. You love music.
Love music.
So shout out somebody that you listen to. Doesn't matter who.
Okay.
Just give me one
No.
random
He wears
person.
a Tupac shirt all the time.
Yeah,
so
like,
don't
I'm
feel
like,
bad
I
about
no-
listen
saying.
to Noah Kahn a
No,
lot.
I don't know who
I
that
don't know
You
is.
don't know who
Yeah, I
Noah
don't know who
Kahn
that
is?
is.
It's like a folk singer.
Okay, so let's take Noah folk singer Khan for a 2nd,
Uh-huh.
and so let's just say that's somebody that you might not idolize, but you like his music.
Yeah.
Okay, and so if Noah was to come on with a message, let's just say, I know CDs are not a thing anymore, but let's just say Noah comes on with a message before a song or something, or even, this is crazy, or even back in my day, people would write songs that told stories about their life, stories about their experiences, and things like that. Things that like,
Now it's all about that bass.
oh man, it really is. I went down a rabbit hole last night. Of lead singer for Alice in Chains, and his story, man, was so tragic, and again died of overdose. But like if you go back and listen to some of the songs he was singing, there was such a cry for help in those songs that it was like, oh my God, like why didn't anybody just see what was really going on? But anyways, but if no one was to come on with a message and be like, hey, look, like this is what's going on, do you think that like at that moment in time, like because you listen to that music, you enjoy that music, you like that would speak more to you than just somebody randomly coming to your school and being like, hey, like don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Drugs are bad. Go home.
Mhm.
Like, do you think it would speak more to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think like if a bigger artist, if like Drake came out and said something like that, nobody's
Drake's
gonna
not.
believe that, man.
Yeah, I was gonna
like,
say
no
Drake's not
one's
doing
gonna
that, bro.
believe
No.
He's more worried about
No.
Yeah, like a
When
lot
you-
of the like rappers.
When
that
your
people
Instagram is
love,
champagne poppy, okay, like that, like no, like
I
it's
think,
not
I
happening.
think though, like ultimately though, one of the biggest problems that we run into is the fact that society, whether it's celebrities, politicians, healthcare companies, insurance companies, they want us to be sick. Yeah,
Mhm.
like I think it comes down to they want. I mean, you take. To get not super dark, but the Sack family, who was responsible for OxyContin, right?
I didn't know that,
Purdue
but
Pharma,
I'm
Purdue
learning.
Pharma, all this stuff. There's a show called Dope Sick. It's on Hulu. It's got Michael Keaton in it, Caitlin Dever. All
I
this
seen
stuff.
somebody suggest that the other day.
Fan-flippin-tastic. A big portion of it actually takes place in Kentucky. It's talking about like the OxyContin situation. So like they created OxyContin, and the CEO, everybody involved in that, just kept pushing more and pushing more and pushing more and pushing more on people, and created the opiate epidemic that we have today.
That's crazy.
Like they just got like they've just been through all the court proceedings and all this stuff because so many families sued them because of this. It's a very good show to watch. A lot of language, but a very good show. It just, there are people out there in power and positions, CEOs, presidents, governors, whatever else you want to throw out there, celebrities. They make money off of our addictions. They make money. They succeed. They are loaded because of our problems.
Yeah.
There's no money in making people well. There's not to say, I mean, yeah, the ultimate goal is to work ourselves out of a job, but I guarantee you, recovery centers, like, things like that, like, they don't have money if people don't have problems.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, like in order to bring more money in, people don't create answers; they just create more problems, and more reliance on them, and so yeah, I mean,
we just can't rely on those people,
right,
to save us,
yeah,
from the problems they created.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means necessary, but again, I do believe that that you can't tell me that we flew to the moon, but yet we can't cure cancer. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't know. It's a good question. I wasn't there, so I don't know. Now all this stuff just got declassified with JFK and all them and so, like, I don't know how crazy that's going to be, but yeah, I mean, hypothetically speaking, like, I do believe that you do have some very powerful people who would rather who if people got well, that it would cost them millions of dollars because people got well.
I mean, like, who do you think, are writing these songs and making these shows?
Yeah.
And, I mean, like, not to say that, I'm not going to make the statement that these directors, like, that they want people to be addicted and all that. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I mean, like, these people that they know what sells. I guess I'll put it that way. They know that
sex.
That's why people watch Euphoria. Sex and drugs. But that's why people.
Euphoria is a show.
Yeah, it's a show.
That's what we've been talking about. Where have you been? It's got Zendaya in it, Sydney Sweeney, like all the.
I don't know who those people are.
Famous now. But I think
you don't know who those people are.
He's very out of touch. He's an old man. He's almost 40. He didn't even go to college. But I mean, anyway.
Yeah.
But it's. I think ultimately what I'm trying to say is, like, we can't rely on these people that created the problem to help save us from the problem. And, that's where it goes back to, it's up to us, up to people, doing a podcast for tens of people. But, it's up to, us to spread awareness. It's up to us to come up with ideas. It's up to us to, spread messages on, like, TikTok and, in front of, your generation, our generation. It's up to us to do our part, to help stop the problem, to do what we can to help, bring education to the situation, to help bring awareness to the situation, and to really, do everything that we can. Now, that's what stinks, is that, ultimately, until we get to a point where we're rich, famous, popular enough, whatever you want to say, to have the money and means to do a big, impactful thing, it's up to a bunch of people making small impacts will eventually make a big impact. But there's a lot of complacency. There's a lot of, the problem's too big. I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to try and tackle it.
I was going to say, I feel like there's a lot of, if it doesn't affect me, I'm not going to worry about it.
Exactly. And, and that's a problem everywhere. I mean, like, it's that problem with drug use, problem with sexual violence, physical violence, domestic abuse. It's not a problem. I don't care about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk about it until it happens to me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm a big advocate.
There's a very big lack of empathy in people nowadays.
I often say, Keenan's heard me say it, I think the biggest problem in the world today is a lack of empathy. I think just our inability to put ourselves in the shoes of other people and see their trauma, see what they've been through, and try to understand it, and really try to help them move past it and through it, rather than just, I'll get over it. Or, as we've talked, there's a big problem with that in the faith community. I'll just pray more. You just have more faith, or if you just listened, if you just obeyed, if you just did this, and that's a toxic mentality that a lot of Christians have. I've heard it. Keenan's heard it. We've seen it. It's been on Facebook. It's been in messages. It's been preached from pulpits. Like, it's very bad. It's sad that is the case. And I hope, like I said, that Keenan and I try its best to make this podcast, something where we have open conversations. We talk about the devil advocate. We make things more than just one-sided. We try to approach things from different angles and different avenues, because if you don't you are, we've oftentimes said, if you don't, then you are limiting your audience. You're saying that, you're either on my side or you're against me. You're my friend or you're my foe. And that's not the mentality that Christ wants us to have. Christ wants us to be open and to love other people, to meet them where they're at, to meet the addict, in a homeless encampment with a needle in their arm, and like to meet the sexual assault victim in the hospital, he wants us to go to these places to help people, bless people, love people. But we can't do that if we are sitting across the aisle pointing fingers, or if we're on Facebook making, like we talked about earlier, we're on Facebook making posts and comments that are pushing people further away from God rather than bringing them closer into God. And so it's ultimately our job and our responsibility as Christians to do what we can to make, we should be. Keenan talks about this place, Fruition being a hospital, a church being a hospital for the sick, where people can come in and we can introduce them to a God that can provide them with the hope, grace, mercy, forgiveness that they desperately need, and the healing that they need. And unfortunately, a lot of churches are like, as Keenan calls them, country clubs. They don't look like me, talk like me, pray like me, believe like me, then get out. And Lex and I talked about that earlier before we recorded, but it's so important. I think as Christians is ultimately, we want to point people to Christ in this podcast. As Christians, it's our job and responsibility to be open to our congregants' problems and their issues, not to shy away from them because of what they do or what they struggle with, but to have open conversations with them, and to pray with those types of people, and to help those types of people, and to go out into communities. That's why I value, we don't have a huge youth program here, but I love being able to interact with the kids your age and things like that, because it helps me stay grounded to realize that there's still work to be done. There's still problems out there, and I want to be able to pour into you so you can pour into your classmates, pour into the people that you see that I don't get to see. And I think that's ultimately what's really important for the if there are other youth ministers or anything listening to this, to say like, hey, the work you're doing has bigger impact than what you see. Because I can say something, I can give Alexa some encouragement, and she can take that and give that encouragement to someone at school that I've never even met. Although I've met several of her friends, pretty good people. But it's just like, but and same thing goes with just normal, because we have a teenager here. We're talking about that a little bit, but same thing goes with Keenan. He tells somebody something, he gives encouragement to somebody, and the hope is that they take that into their workplace and into everywhere else they go and everything else they do to be a blessing to them.
I was just going to ask, like, if you had a message to leave, if you had a message to give somebody, if you had something that you felt like would change someone's world or change someone's outcome, what would it be?
Well, that's a good one.
That's
a really.
I liked it.
I'm sure people just look down at their phones or however they listen, and it was like, did I just stop? What just happened? Yeah. What's a good message? What do you think?
Be there for your kids.
Okay.
Hear them, listen to them.
Yeah.
And when they tell you that they're feeling a certain way, believe that they feel that way.
Yeah. Don't try to talk them out of it or whatever, but instead try to understand them more in the process.
Very understanding, and I think that is the best way to carry a parent-child relationship and to better your children.
So who do you feel like the bigger yapper is, since you called us yappers?
It's Nick.
Oh yeah, see,
1,000%.
I mean, our episodes would probably be 12 minutes if it wasn't for Nick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I just thank you for being on here with us today, for taking that step. Maybe if you could, I know Dan's already been here. I know you've been here. Maybe if you could kind of like, nudge your mom sometime or something, and be like, hey, yeah. I feel like she's like one of.
Just leave her a note so you're next.
She likes to hide in the back of the church. She likes to listen and like give ideas and then have us.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like Amanda's like one of those people who has a ton of knowledge and who's like really like a soft-spoken leader type person.
Yeah.
But it's like you will never know she's on the place until like you ask for her.
She's so nervous.
Yeah, exactly. I was so proud of her to be able, like, whenever we did the suicide awareness ceremony type deal here after church, like I was so proud of her for getting up and speaking. Like that was
so scary.
Yeah, I know, and it's such a big step, and it's like I think we need more stuff like that. Like we need more people like that. We need more attention again brought to stuff like that into what people struggle with. So what you can do is go to school tomorrow and be like, I was on a podcast yesterday. You need to download this podcast, and then whenever you do, who knows, you might start a revolution.
How many students are at your school?
At Central, I think it's like 1,000 kids. I don't even know. There's so many children at that school.
I mean, hey, and she goes to college too. So,
and I go to EC3.
There's a lot of people that you could literally just be like, hey, listen to this podcast and see what you think. You know? So I'm just saying.
I ratted everybody out in school.
Yeah.
I done exposed all of our dirty laundry.
Yeah, Schoolhouse Snitch coming your way. That's probably what you need to call this. Schoolhouse Snitch. Call this episode Schoolhouse Snitch and see what happens, man. So, again, we thank you so much for tuning in. We thank you so much for being a part of this. We hope and pray that if maybe you're in an area, maybe somewhere that is affected by by overdose, by drugs, by addiction and things like that. So we hope that maybe something that was said today can kind of help improve your situation as well. We continue to pray for you. We love you. And until we see you again, be blessed.